Hi everybody, and welcome back to my kitchen. Our paste tomatoes have started to come in, so today we're going to be making some fermented tomato salsa. As I mentioned, our paste tomatoes are starting to come in, and they really trickle in for us. We only have about a dozen plants, which doesn't really produce, say, like a whole bushel size. I also don't really feel like canning tomato salsa this year, so I thought it would be perfect to try experimenting with some fermented salsa. I've actually been wanting to do this for a few years, and if you've been following me for a while, you know that I absolutely love fermented foods. I'll post a link to my fermented food playlist here. I also have some really great suggestions for you guys. I'll post the links in the video as well as in the description below for what to do with your tomato harvest if you don't want to do a lot of canning. I have a fermented cherry tomato recipe I love. We roast cherry tomatoes and pack them in olive oil. So there's a lot of different options for you if you don't want to warm up your house and break out the canner. Now, some of the benefits of fermented foods is that it makes your nutrients in your foods more bioavailable, specifically B vitamins, and it also increases trace minerals and nutrients. But the number one reason why people really love to ferment is because of that added benefit of probiotics. You're essentially making a probiotic rich food right there on your counter. Now, the only downside that I know of about fermentation is that you do have to store it in the fridge. So that is the one drawback to not canning this, but I don't care. I'm excited to get started. So what's super cool about this recipe is that all of this stuff has come from our garden, except we got the jalapenos from our neighbor because we didn't grow any jalapeno peppers this year. So you're going to need about 1 pound of tomatoes, and don't worry, I will write up an accompanying blog post to go with this so you can just print off the recipe. So about 1 pound of tomatoes. I would recommend paste, but I really think you can do whatever you want. Anywhere from 2 to 4 cloves of garlic. That's going to be up to you and your personal taste. You're going to need about 1 nice looking green pepper, 1 jalapeno pepper, and I've got my recipe right here. About enough onion, like a medium sized onion. Our onions turned out really small again this year. I can't seem to grow big onions. That's all right. So I'll just use a few smaller onions and chop that up to equal about what a medium sized onion would be, which is probably about 3/4 of a cup to a cup. We're going to add some cumin to ours. You're also going to need a good quality sea salt or salt, unrefined salt of some kind. If you're in the United States, you can use Redmond's, a little bit of black pepper, and I think we're going to add some lime juice to this as well. Most of the recipes I found online call for cilantro. I'm going to be substituting parsley. The reason for this, and let me know in the comments if you're like this too, cilantro tastes like soap. Like not even like a little bit like soap, not an aftertaste. Like I might as well chomp on a bar of ivory soap. And so we don't want to include it in our salsa because it'll just completely ruin the taste for us. But if you're like me, let me know in the comments. I'm super curious. So I'm going to get to chopping and prepping all of this, and I'll show you the procedure afterwards. If you're ready to take your herbal knowledge and learning to a deeper level, to understand the nitty-gritty aspects of natural living and natural health, to bring vitality back into your life, and to learn how to weave these beautiful rhythms and cycles we have on this planet into your own practices and way of being, not to mention join a supportive, interactive, and really great community, I invite you to check out my monthly membership platform, Weavers of Plant Wisdom. If this sounds interesting to you, you can check out the link in the description box below to learn more. All right, so we have all of our ingredients chopped. Now, while we were chopping, I had these jars in the sink and I poured boiling water over them just to make sure that they were sterilized and good and clean before we started our fermentation. So here you have your 1 pound of paste tomatoes. We decided not to use the food processor. I wanted to chop these by hand because we really like a chunky salsa. So that's 453 grams for my Canadian friends in the audience, about 1 pound. Here we have 1 decently sized green pepper, 1 medium sized onion, 4 cloves of garlic, and 1 jalapeno pepper, and that we did use the food processor to chop those. So I'm just gonna dump that right in the bowl here. And I'm gonna mix everything in a larger bowl first before I transfer it to my mason jars. Just feels like that's gonna be an easier process for me. Now the trick with jalapenos, if you don't like things too spicy, you can actually remove the seeds. So we opted to keep a few seeds in. My husband likes a little bit of heat. I don't, so we compromised. Isn't that what marriage is all about? All right, so I have that in there. I'm gonna add my salt at this point. So you want about 2 teaspoons of a good quality unrefined salt. Don't use the cheap table salt at the store, so you can use Himalayan sea salt, regular Celtic sea salt, or if you have access to Redmond's, you can grab that too. So I'm gonna take 2 teaspoons and I'm gonna sprinkle that over the whole mixture. And at this point, we are gonna be adding some cumin to it as well. So I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of cumin powder to this. And the cumin's optional. If you don't like cumin, don't add it. And I've got a handful of finely chopped parsley I'm gonna add to here as well. And I've got, it's all the way over there, I've got 1 tablespoon of lime juice that we're gonna add. And from here, you really wanna mix everything up really, really well. So this is why I thought it'd be a lot easier to do in a nice big bowl before I transfer it to my mason jars. It already smells so good. I bet this right here would make an amazing just fresh salsa. You know, no need to ferment. Now your fermentation time is going to be about 3 to 7 days, depending on how sour you want your end product to be. The longer it ferments, the more sour it will be. So I've got everything really well mixed in here. We like using red onion. You can substitute white or yellow onions, cooking onions, whatever you have. Again, what's really nice about these recipes in terms of fermentation, it's not like canning. You're able to get a little bit more creative in the kitchen. So from here, I actually had to stop the video because I noticed some big chunks of garlic that didn't get processed enough through the food processor. So I just chopped those up a little finely. From here, you're just gonna start packing your jars. Now, everybody knows that I absolutely love the Mason Tops fermentation system. These are called pickle pebbles. They are fermentation weights, and their job is to keep your food below the brine so you don't have any mold or anything grow. And these are called pickle pipes. They get put on the top and they allow all of the carbon dioxide that's created as a byproduct of the fermentation process to escape the jar, but you don't get any bacteria in. Now these are not necessary. You can burp your jars daily and you can just, keep an eye on things, make sure mold isn't growing. But after years of fermenting, I absolutely love the system. So, and what's really neat, you'll see it as I start to put it in the jars here. This recipe creates its own liquid from the tomatoes. So there's no need, if you've done fermenting before, you know that you have to create a saltwater brine solution. No need to do that in this case because the tomatoes are so juicy. And we opted not to take out the seeds. Some recipes I saw, I'm just gonna see how much this actually ends up making. Some recipes I saw told you to actually take out all the seeds, but we decided to keep them in so it's nice and juicy. As I mentioned, fermentation time is going to vary depending on taste. So after the 3-day mark, open up your jar, give it a little bit of a taste. Make sure you've got clean hands going in there because you're going to have to remove any fermentation weights that might be in. And see if you like the flavor. If you like it, you're done. You take your weights off, you change your lid, and then you are good to go. If you want it a little bit more sour and a little bit more fermented, you'll want it to last, stay on the counter just a bit longer. Oh, it smells so good. How many times on YouTube have I said I wish we had smell-o-vision? So this makes just shy of 2 500 milliliter jars. So next time I'll probably do closer to 1.5 pounds of tomatoes just so I can fill up my jars all the way. All right. And from here, I'm going to use my pickle packer. You don't have to use something exactly like this. If you've got a muddler, that will work. And my goal, just like when you're making sauerkraut, is I just want to push those veggies down. You see how all that liquid is starting to come up? That's exactly what I want. I want the liquid on the top. So I'm just going to gently kind of squish that down. Look at all of that wonderful liquid that's coming to the top. That's what we want. One more time. And then I'm going to put my fermentation weights in. I like this change Mason Tops made. These guys now have handles. Make it so much easier to work with. And see, right there, all that liquids come to the top. There we are. And from here, I'm just going to put on my lids. Screw on a mason jar lid. And I'm done. These are going to sit on the counter for about 3 to 7 days. Well, there you have it, folks. You have fermented tomato salsa. And you can easily put this in 1 liter jars if that's easier for storage for you. If you have a cold cellar, so once these are done fermenting, you're either going to have to store them in the fridge, or if you happen to have a cold room, which we don't have. I covet a cold room. I would love to have one. It would make things a lot easier. But if you have that kind of 5-degree temperature, which is what you really want for a cold room, you could store your ferments down there, no problem at all. So I was getting a bit of mixed research when it came to how long this lasts in the fridge. So I went to a handy dandy fermentation group and I asked, who here's made salsa? How long does it keep? And there were folks that said, I still have some from last year and it's delicious. So keep an eye on it. If it starts growing funky things, then you're gonna have to throw it out. But it sounded like most people had their salsa last anywhere from 4 to 6 months up to a year. So you probably want to use this within the year, so that'll give you an idea of how much you want to make. Now, if you have any questions about fermentation or you want some more ideas about what to do with all of your tomatoes, you can leave some comments below. And until next time, this is Corinne from Spirea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.